Color model presented by Chong Shin Yee, Firdaus, Yogendra, and Zureen. Introduction. Color model is an abstract mathematical model describing the way colors can be represented as tuples of numbers, typically as 3 or 4 values or color components. 7 types of model: Tristy-Muller's color space, CREXYZ color space, RGB color model, CMYK color model, models of mechanism of color vision, vertebrate evolution of color vision. Advantages of color model: utilizing the wide color reproduction area of Adobe RGB and improving precision of color calibration on monitors. Color model is a quantitative representation if the colors that are relevant in an application domain. It involves human vision, represent the color that the human eye can perceive. Human eye consists of 2 parts: rods help with night vision where the light intensity is very low. Cones help when the light intensity is high. 3 types of cones: R, red; G for green; B for blue. Color perception is achieved by combining the intensities. This is an example of RGB model. Consists of mainly 3 primary colors and the derivation of these colors. RGB model. Most recording systems and display systems use a similar additive mechanism for representing color information, represented as a point in a 3-dimensional space where the dimensions correspond to possible intensities of red, blue, and green light channels. Implemented using data structures that allocate the same number of bits to each color channel, image would be represented as 2D matrix, where each cell in the dimension contains a 24-bit color instance, and these cells are called pixels. When the space available for representing images of this size is not as large, the number of bits allocated for each pixel needs to be brought down. Solution: reduce the precision of the color channels. Number 2. Reduce the number of bits needed to represent color instances is to use a color table. It is a commonly used algorithm for color table generation is the median cut algorithm. Reducing the number of bits needed to encode the color instances is to rely on the properties of human perception. YRB, YUV, and YIQ models. Human eye is more sensitive to contrast than to color. Color space typically used as part of a color image pipeline color model that represent grayscale. It is more effective in creating reduced representations without negatively affecting perception. The blue color contributes less to the perception of light than red, which itself contributes less than green. Reflects the human eye's color and light perception. Luminance, or the amount of light, Y, in a given RGB based color instance is computed. Y equals to 0.299 red plus 0.587 green and plus 0.114 blue. It reflects the human eye's color and light perception characteristics. An alternative representation: YUV subtract the luminance component from the color, U and V as per shown. It ensures that a completely black and white picture has no R and V components that need to be stored or communicated through networks. U and V components reflect the prominence of the corresponding color instance precisely. Further studies. Human eye does not prefer either U, blue minus luminance, or V, red minus luminance. Eye is shown to be less sensitive to the differences in the purple-green color range as opposed to the differences in the orange-blue color range. These are the 2 equations represented for I and Q. Y and Q, model of color. The eye is least sensitive to the Q component and more sensitive to the Y component. Next, we'll look into CIE lab, and what is HSV. What is CIE lab model? It is a characteristic of human perception to shape color space. It is built upon a color space called a CIE and have three components, X, Y, and Z. CIE space covers all the chromaticities visible to human eye. X, Y, and Z transform into other components. X, Y, and Z components of the CIE model will transform into three other components which L, A, and B. Example, Euclidean distance. It is the difference in perception of animosity and luminosity. Shown is the equation and example of a calculation. Image of a CIE lab model. Look and understand. HSV model. What is HSV? It stands for hue saturation values. Hue is wavelength of color. Saturation is amount of your color. Value is brightness. HSV. It is a spectrum of gray from black to white. Is represented as vertical axis. The amount of color is represented as distance from this vertical, and hue is represented as angle. HSV model and value. Hexagonal cone. Also can be represented in cone or cylinder. This is the example of model and the values. Now let's look into color-based image representation using histograms. Color is perceived through three types of cone sensitive. An image then can be seen as two-dimensional matrix of color instances with height times width, matching two images based on their color content for similarity-based retrieval then corresponds to comparing the triples, which is another word for pixels contained in the corresponding array. Okay, now this can be done by comparing the pixel pairs at the same array location for both images. But there are two disadvantages contribute to this method. Number one, these may be very costly, especially if the images are very large. For example, given a pair of 1000 times 1000 images, this would require a million similarity or distance computations in the color space. The second disadvantage is pixel by pixel matching of the images would be good for looking for almost exact matches. But any image that are slightly rotated or shifted would be identified as mismatches. But there is also an alternative representation. Both provide significant saving in matching costs and also reduces the sensitivity of the retrieval algorithms to rotation, shift, and many other deformations. Is the color histogram. That is our alternative representation. Okay, now this is an example of color histogram. How this color histogram works is, instead of comparing every single pixel, they compare a range of pixels. For example, look according to this histogram, there are 46,274 pixels in the image that falls in the range of 51,000 and 101 in terms of red and 153,203 in terms of blue color. In the array or vector representative, each position corresponds to a pair of red and blue color waves. That is a thank you. The sorry discussion. Okay, what are the key problems in modeling a media data? Problem is a modeling in modeling a media data can be divided into five parts, which are number one, analysis, number two, design, number three, development, number four, implementation, and the last one, evaluation. Okay, how does the model work in describing the media? Okay, it is an abstract mathematical method. When this model is associated with a precise description of how the components are to be interpreted, example, viewing conditions, etc., the resulting set of colors is called color space. This section describes ways in which human color vision can be modeled. The subtractive color represents a CMYK model which is used for printing basically based on ink. Additive color represents RGB model that is usually used for computer display and based on light transmission. Okay, here we can see is the example of color models that are commonly used, which are CMYK and RGB model. That's all from us. Thank you. The end.